Hello and welcome to another edition of For the Record. I'm Sean Murphy. Today my guest is a returning guest on the show. His name is Keith Bloomer. He's a lung transplant recipient and also secretary for the Rhode Island Organ Donation Awareness Coalition, and we'll meet him when we come back, so stay with us. Welcome back to For the Record. I'm Sean Murphy. My guest today, a returning guest on the show, his name is Keith Bloomer. He's a lung transplant recipient and also this year secretary of the Rhode Island Organ Donation Awareness Coalition. First of all, welcome back.
Thanks for having me.
And I guess congratulations on the upgrade as far as title. You're also secretary now, right?
Yeah. We've had some leadership changes in the organization.
It happens. Sometimes it's necessary.
And I've volunteered to be secretary.
How are you feeling, by the way?
I'm doing great.
Really?
Yeah.
So why don't we start out with, for those that might not have seen the other show, just a background story on you and why you're here and what we're going to talk about today.
Sure. Today we're here to talk about lung transplantation, but of course something has to lead up to that.
Right.
And for me, that was a diagnosis of a disease called scleroderma. Scleroderma means hard skin. It's an autoimmune disease treated by a rheumatologist typically. For me, it happened in 1997. I was about 26 years old at the time, and I had some very unique symptoms for a young man. I was out of breath playing basketball. Not too unique, given I could be out of shape, working hard, not exercising as much as I should, so didn't think much of that. But also symptoms like burping a lot. My fingertips would turn blue. My fingertips seemed fat, sausage-like. And I got lucky and saw some great doctors down in New Jersey where I lived at the time, and they diagnosed me right away. I say I'm lucky because many people get misdiagnosed with scleroderma or don't get diagnosed with scleroderma even though they have it for many years. So in that regard, I was definitely lucky.
Yeah, but there are some people that either will just ignore it or just think that they're out of shape and need to just, actually work out more, or, just think that there's something else wrong with it. If they see blue fingertips, they're like, oh, I don't know what's wrong with me, but this will go away after a while.
Absolutely, and I thought that to an extent, and luckily my wife at the time, we had just gotten married, was very, very smart to push me towards the doctors.
Yeah. So back in '97 when you were diagnosed with this, with the disease, surely they didn't know as much as they know now. Has there been great progress made in like research and development?
There certainly has been. When I was diagnosed with scleroderma in '97, they had said you'd typically live about 5 years. You'd probably have kidney issues, lung issues as well. So, we were pretty scared when I got diagnosed. Actually, we immediately were planning on moving to Rhode Island because I had just gotten a job in Rhode Island. And the doctors told me not to move because I'd die.
Wow.
And that only they could take care of me. Now, he was a specialist in scleroderma, well known in the scleroderma world, but I told him I'm sure there were good doctors in Boston,
yeah,
or in Rhode Island as well that could take care of me.
He's not the only guy in the
exactly.
Northeast that would be able to handle this, right?
So we gave him 2 weeks to do whatever he wanted to with me, and then I'd go move and I'd find somebody else to help me.
By the way, since you knew you had this and you knew you were going to move anyway, at that point, did you start looking in the greater Rhode Island, Boston, Connecticut area just to see if there was someone who actually dealt with this stuff?
My wife's family's from Rhode Island. That's why we were moving up here. And they knew very good doctors. And my doctor in New Jersey, I think, also made the recommendation for who I should see up here. And it worked out great.
So let's go back then again to '97 because I want to know, your mindset at the point, whether you sort of what your mentality was and just what went through your mind, and basically how you decided to approach life in general after that. Because I would imagine the first thing is you don't really understand it, but then we all go through the emotional states too. So how did you handle it, and what were your first moves?
Well, at that time I was 26, so I thought I was invincible.
Yeah. How could this happen?
Exactly. Yeah. And the disease mostly affects women, so that was another unique aspect of it. I decided it wasn't going to slow me down. and for the most part it didn't. At that point I had about 50% lung capacity, and that certainly did make it tougher for me to do some of the things I enjoyed: bike riding, playing basketball, a few different athletic type things.
So you were active, you know?
I was, and that had to slow down a little bit. But it was still important at the time to continue exercising and staying in the best shape I could, so that with the decrease in lung capacity, my body was still able to process the oxygen in the best way possible.
Did your diet have to change after that too? Are there certain things that the body, you know, digests and processes differently, or?
There's lots of anecdotal evidence about diet and things like that, different household remedies for not the ailment itself, but some of the symptoms of the ailment, of the scleroderma. And so I tried everything. I tried drinking apple cider vinegar. That was awful.
Yeah.
Some other things like that. And in the end, it was best just to take the medications the doctors prescribed. They treated the symptoms, tried to slow down the progression of the disease. And
just
and
eat
other
healthy
than that,
in
I was
general,
fine. Right. Right.
Because I mean, that's good advice for anybody, regardless of what condition you're in.
Absolutely.
So you were diagnosed with it. So that you know answers my question about what you did and how you felt. How about people around you, family, friends? What was their reaction? And obviously they were very supportive, because we talked about that before. But talk about it a little bit.
At that time, everybody was supportive. Nobody was concerned. We were just going to get the best doctors we could and do the best that we could to take care of symptoms as they occurred and keep me in the best possible shape to fight this.
The interesting thing is, not only did you not stop, you didn't even slow down really your lifestyle, in the sense that, sure, you were diagnosed with this, which is a disease, but you still, not only did you, you planned on, you had another job, you were coming to Rhode Island, you planned on moving and, you know, getting on with your life and your career, regardless what. A disease couldn't even slow you down.
Oh, at that point, yes, you're right. Working and family life, those were things that kept me busy, so I didn't think about being sick.
Good point, yeah.
I'm lucky that disease affects everybody different. Some people have more external symptoms. They lose mobility in their joints. I never lost that. So it allowed me to continue working as a civil engineer. I'd work out in the field. By 2006, I needed oxygen, and that's where things really started to slow down. I needed oxygen 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. My employers were great, accommodated that, and things were still going well. So that was, 9, 10 years after diagnosis. 9 years after diagnosis, probably 10 or 11 years after the first symptoms may have occurred.
Right. So yeah, so you kind of got on with your life and just did what you had to do, but eventually a lung transplant was necessary.
Right. By 2006, I needed oxygen 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I had to start slowing down, continued to work full time, but I could really feel the effects on my overall health. By 2007, I was diagnosed with a disease called pulmonary hypertension. That's high blood pressure between the heart and the lungs. And that really slowed me down. Once I got that diagnosis, I decided I needed to leave work. I gave work about 3 days to tie up loose ends, but I thought that I'd get back to work. I thought I'd take some medication that would make me better, and I'd be back within 4 to 6 weeks, I said. Unfortunately, 6, 8, 12 weeks later, no improvement. Started to try stronger medications. Unfortunately, 3, 4 months later, even those stronger medications weren't helping. And it's around that time that my wife and I decided it was time to look into lung transplantation. My doctors had actually talked about lung transplantation 2 or 3 years before that period.
Right. And I could tell that any person, I don't want to use the term prideful, but we all have it in us. You decided to work. Do you think at this, looking back on it, that maybe you should have left work at an earlier point, or?
Actually, I don't think it would have helped me.
One way or the other?
Only
really?
because the timing for me was so perfect when it came to transplant. They don't want to transplant you when you're too healthy. They also don't want to transplant you when you're too sick.
Why is that?
So you have to get somewhere in the middle. There's a limited number of lungs available, and there's a lot of people waiting for lungs. Yeah. So they do base it based on your current condition, as well as the projection of your future condition after transplant.
So you got on the list. How long did it take before you got on the list before a transplant happened for you?
Well, it took me about 6 to 8 months to get evaluated and get listed. A lot of testing, very thorough physical. They want to make sure that you're going to be healthy enough to survive the transplant and to make it many years beyond.
Because in their, I guess in their mind, if it doesn't work out, then it was a waste to have those lungs go to you if it could have gone to somebody else, if the survival rate was going to be much more.
Exactly,
longer.
exactly. They want to get, unfortunately, the most bang for the buck. You
Right.
know, it's an extensive surgery, and they want to make sure you're going to do well with it.
Let's take a break, and we've got a lot more to get to. Is there a website people can go and learn more about the Rhode Island Organ Donation Awareness Coalition?
There sure is, www.riodac.org.
All right. Keith Bloomer, volunteer lung transplant recipient, and also now secretary of the Rhode Island Organ Donation Awareness Coalition, which we'll get into a lot more in the second segment. So stay with us. I'm Sean Murphy. This is For the Record. We'll be back. Welcome back to For the Record. I'm Sean Murphy. My guest, Keith Bloomer, lung transplant recipient, and also this year secretary of the Rhode Island Organ Donation Awareness Coalition. And we were kind of kidding off the air. There were actually, the people there had higher aspirations for you, but you said, let me just start with secretary for now, right? I don't want to do any more work, you know.
They did. We had a little bit of a leadership change, and we're looking for somebody to step up to be president. And unfortunately, I wasn't ready for that at this time. I'm still somewhat nervous about my health,
right?
And didn't want to become president and then have something happen and not be able to fulfill the expectations of everybody.
You know, what some people say, what could be a more difficult job, maybe not for you because you're a skilled, seasoned veteran at it now, is you know, you're kind of the de facto PR person because you've been coming on my show, you've been on radio shows. So, you know, you're comfortable doing it. But for some people, that would be a very difficult thing to do.
Certainly, people have different opinions as to sharing their story and their experience.
Right.
And I'm lucky also probably through my work experience of talking to planning boards, zoning boards, usually talking to groups and giving my professional opinion that they may not want to hear so much, that maybe this development would be okay for the neighborhood. It's certainly easier to sit with someone like yourself who doesn't hate what I'm saying.
You know, and also I find that for a lot of people that do contract any kind of disease or sickness or illness, that in and of itself, they want to learn more about it because they certainly have a vested interest in learning more, but they also really want to get the word out about it, and they sort of, like, you know, kind of again become the de facto person who speaks on behalf of. There's no better person to speak on behalf of a situation like that than someone who's experiencing it.
Absolutely, and that's why I'm involved with the Rhode Island Organ Donor Awareness Coalition. Is it gives me the opportunity to share my story. My transplant, I was on the waiting list for 1 day. I'm very, very fortunate with that.
Yeah.
And it's sort of my goal so that maybe everybody could have to wait a short period, maybe not 1 day, but maybe less than a month.
I would assume that you would also certainly, because of that, encourage you know, people to donate, to be an organ donor for sure. We're going to get into that as far as, you know, because we were talking about the Facebook stuff with that. But right now, I want you to tell people what the Rhode Island Organ Donation Awareness Coalition is, what it's all about, and the fine people that are involved with it.
Sure, we're a volunteer-led organization in Rhode Island to encourage people to register as organ donors. We are composed of both organ recipients, transplant recipients. We have living donors that are volunteers with our group. We have donor families that have lost a loved one and their family member was registered as an organ donor and was able to donate organs. We also have doctors and nurses, particularly from Rhode Island Hospital, which has a transplant center for both kidneys and pancreases.
Now, was this coalition around early on as far as the onset for you, or did it come along more recently?
This group's actually been in existence for over 25 years.
Oh.
I got involved with them after my transplant, about a year and a half after my transplant, when I started to feel healthy enough to get out and do things.
Right. How'd you find them? How'd they find you? And
I think I found them online.
Okay.
I think I looked up Rhode Island Transplant and stumbled upon them.
And when you got involved with the organization, certainly a lot of like-minded people, and also a lot of other, lung transplant recipients, I would imagine.
There are a few. Rhode Island does not have a lung transplant program, so we have to go out of the state to get our transplants. Many of us go to Brigham and Women's Hospital up in Boston. Some end up at some of the bigger centers like Cleveland Clinic or Pittsburgh or Duke. But there are quite a few of us in the state.
Now, I assume because it's in the name, Rhode Island Organ Donation Awareness Coalition, basically, though, what is the mantra of the organization?
We're here to educate and encourage people to register as organ donors. We let them know what happens as an organ donor, what benefits there are for your family, things like that. We also show them through our stories the benefits that the recipient gets.
Right. How you can live a somewhat normal life and get on with your life.
If you're unfortunate enough to have been in an accident and you're about to pass, there's actually laws that say that the hospital has to ask your family if you'd like to donate your organs. So even if you're not an organ donor, you don't want to be an organ donor, it's important to tell that to your family. We encourage them to discuss these issues and get them out there so that it's not a difficult decision.
Right. And how long have you been doing that for now?
I've been doing that for about 2.5 years, I think.
In this job that you do, are your tasks? I know you're secretary now, but obviously you come on radio and TV and talk about it. But what are some other sort of responsibilities and tasks that you do within the organization?
Well, we attend or try to attend as many functions as we can. These can be community functions. They can be functions of other nonprofit organizations, typically health related. We go to companies that have health fairs and we'll represent ourselves in the organ donation and transplant communities at these organizations. We speak at schools when we can. We also attend the National Guard Air Show up in Rhode Island. It's a big deal in June, and we typically have a table there. So we will talk to whoever will invite us.
It's just about getting the word out wherever you can. And it's interesting you mentioned the schools because, when kids are getting their driver's license for the first time, there's always, of course, the option. I think you probably have to be 18 though, or anyway, before you can opt to do it. But at least it kind of puts the the buzz in their head about good things that can be done to help other people. So even a little later on down the road, maybe
Absolutely. I was just at Tiverton High School up in Rhode Island and spoke to their senior and junior class about organ donation, and we tied it in with the planning for the prom, as well as getting driver's licenses. And I had a great feedback from the teachers afterwards. Students walking around saying, "I'm going to go register as an organ donor when I get my license.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk to my family about it, so that even if I'm not old enough, they still know what my wishes are."
Right, that's excellent. So now, what kind of a shortage are we talking about, either locally or nationally?
Well, there's probably about 125,000 people waiting for organs. The organ most in demand are kidneys. They probably are waiting for close to 100,000 people waiting for kidneys. Now, kidneys are somewhat unique in that they can be obtained from a living donor. We each have 2 kidneys. If you can find somebody that's a good match and they're willing, they can donate a kidney to you. They can also do what they call kidney chains now, where if your loved one isn't a match for you, they can find somebody they are a match for.
Oh, very nice.
And you can get, I think I've heard up to 23 people exchanging kidneys so that their loved one gets one. So there's lots of opportunities. For lungs, there's about 1,600 people waiting throughout the country. There's about 110,000 people in New England. New England comprises Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and Maine.
Now, social media, we often talk about that as being, obviously one of the best networking tools that are available for like-minded people and people that have the same interest to get in touch and contact with each other. It's a learning tool. It's good for meeting up with old friends or making new ones. But it just so happens that as we do the show today, not too long ago, Facebook instituted an organ donation sort of an option on the Facebook pages. Talk about that a little bit and how it affects you.
That's correct. Recently, Facebook put as part of their timeline, you can put a life event as registering as an organ donor. On Facebook, you don't actually register as an organ donor, but you can share with your friends that you are an organ donor. And if you go to that page, it will give you the opportunity to click on a link that will bring you to an official page to register if you're not already. Interesting, what we found, typically about 30 people a day will register online as organ donors. After that effort was put forth, I think in the first 3 days, 3,000 people in New England registered.
Wow.
You know, so it was 3,000 versus 100 for those 3 days.
Interesting. I heard Mark Zuckerberg, the founder of Facebook, recently got married, and it was his bride who kind of egged him on and sort of suggested that this feature be implemented. And for him, his face lit up when hers did every time they knew another organ donation button was clicked on the Facebook timeline. So it's like a bit of passion for them to be able to implement this.
It certainly excites us in the transplant world to get the word out and lessen that shortage of organs for people waiting.
And certainly, social media in general, like Facebook and other social networking outlets, is an advantage just to get the word out, and maybe for people who may be confused to just kind of find information, right?
Right. We find most of our new volunteers through Facebook. And that's really great. It gives us an opportunity, particularly in Rhode Island, where we have a transplant center that does kidneys and pancreas, but not the other organs. There's a lot of us out there, and our transplant centers outside the state don't necessarily want us seeking information elsewhere because each center has their own rules.
Right.
But it's still nice to be part of a community and learn the rules of other centers, and sometimes challenge our centers with, hey, how come this guy can do this, but you tell me I can't?
Yeah.
Would it be okay if I mow the lawn?
Right.
I know somebody else who's mowing the lawn, and they take precautions, and they're doing well.
So as it stands today, you can lead a fairly active life. You will get winded, you'll get tired, but you're still able to be physically active and do lots of the normal. The only thing you can't do, from what I'm hearing, is your daughter's homework, which is starting to get tougher for you.
That's right. My daughter's now in 3rd grade. She was in kindergarten when I had my transplant.
Right.
And
the math is getting tougher. Right?
The math is tougher, and that's really tough for me to handle because I'm a civil engineer and have taken many math classes in my college days.
By the way, a child's perspective on what's going on in your life, how did she take it? How she has a unique perspective on it. She's probably knows more about it than most other kids because her dad is experiencing it.
She does. She remembers before she was in kindergarten that I was on oxygen 24/7. I was at home. I had a concentrator with a 50-foot hose, and I could walk around the house. We would play hide and go seek, but she would follow the hose to find me.
Right.
So it's much different nowadays. Now we can play hide and go seek at night in the yard, and I can scare the dickens out of her. It's amazing. When I had my transplant, I wasn't able to do a lot of things for myself, and she used to be able to change some bandages for me. She used to crush my pills and feed them into my feeding tube at the time. So she's learned quite a bit for now a 9-year-old.
That's great, and no stopping maybe she'll be an advocate for you certainly when she gets older too.
Absolutely. Because of my volunteering, she's been able to volunteer not only with us but with the Rhode Island Blood Center as well. And it's really taught her compassion and empathy towards people.
I want you to give out the website one more time for the coalition.
Sure, we're at www.riodac.org.
Keith Bloomer, a lung transplant recipient, also secretary this year for the Rhode Island Organ Donation Awareness Coalition. Thanks for coming back on the show.
Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.
And thanks for joining us for another edition of For the Record. I'm Sean Murphy. We will see you next time. Take care.